Hello, everyone. It's Jennie and Laurie of Astropath once again to talk about the second Capricorn full moon of 2024. It's really interesting to have two Capricorn full moons. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to look and compare the two charts and go through the whole process. But before you do anything else, make sure you follow us and subscribe to our channel. And after you've watched us, do leave comments. Jennie is of Hidden Path Astrology. You can find her at hiddenpathastrology.com. You can find me at lauriefarrington.com. And we both do consultations and many different things. Please go to our websites and check us out. I think that's all I need to say at the moment.
Sounds good. Yeah, so we are here to talk about Capricorn full moon number 2. It's happening on July 21st. And that is going to be the main topic of our discussion. But before we get into that, let's go over a couple of dates. Number 1, we are in Cancer season, and the Cancer New Moon was on July 5th of 2024. So that's the seed state of this second Capricorn full moon. If you like to use the bigger, longer cycles, which can actually be a lot more helpful because you can look at your life over a 6-month or a year-long period. The date for that one was January 11th. We had a new moon in Capricorn. So check that out if that time frame makes more sense to you. And then the other thing I just want to say was the first full moon in Capricorn was June 21st, 2024, and now the second one is July 21st, 2024. So what that does is it gives us a really nice pair of bookends that really encompass all of Cancer season. It kind of gives you a benchmark if you watch our first video, whatever that full moon represented for you, and then you have this window of time, and we're going to look at the difference between the two charts and what that has to say, and then you can think about your own life and just kind of take note of what has transpired for you in the period of time. So that's kind of how we're thinking of it, because it's literally, I think the second day of Cancer season, maybe the third day is the first one. And then the other one's like the day before the sun moves into Leo. So anyway, that's the main topic. A brief reminder that a full moon is the midpoint of the cycle. It starts with the new moon, which, as I mentioned, July 5th, new moon of Cancer. And then 2 weeks later, you have the full moon. 2 weeks later, it goes back. So that's the very brief version of the moon cycle. What else do you have to add, Laurie?
Oh, not a whole lot. The full moons, we can think of the full moon as the illumination of what began at the new moon. So it is just interesting that this having two full moons in the same sign really lights up the area for each of us where Capricorn is in our chart, and it lights it up twice. Usually there's just a full moon once in each sign. So it is interesting. It really puts the focus, and the comparison between the two is where some really interesting things come up. So that's what we're gonna look at, a comparison of the two. You want to talk a little bit about Capricorn first, Capricorn itself?
Yeah, let's just do a quick little reminder.
Yeah.
I mean, Capricorn is the cardinal earth sign, so it is a very serious sign. It carries the archetype of the hermit, among others. But so that, I like that one though, because it really shows you how you have to kind of withdraw and go within and kind of understand where you're coming from, figure out where you're at, what you want to do, and then you can do the external half of the sign, which is to get some shit done. And Capricorn really does know how to get things done. It is, knows how to make a plan and knows how to delegate and draw people in. It has a vision and it knows the step-by-step process of doing it. So it's very effective.
And one of the most important things I think about Capricorn is the significance of integrity. Capricorn's not an easy sign. It's very, like you said, Jennie, it's very serious, and it knows how to get things done. And as long as there is a real awareness of internal integrity, which is what it learns on the first end of solitude, hopefully, then with a level of personal integrity, so much wonderful stuff can be accomplished through Capricorn. If a person with a lot of Capricorn does not have personal integrity, it can get a lot done that's not helpful. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's very dictatorial. It's a dictator if without the inner peace. So yeah, Capricorn without any interior reflection, without doing the yin part of the sign, it's not doing that work, and it's just not it's disconnected from the true needs, and it's, you know, operating out of ego instead of out of what does society need, or what does this workplace need, or whatever the thing is that you're working on. So yeah, good. Yeah, that's a great keyword for it. I'm glad you added that.
Yeah, so, you know, as we look at the individual impacts and as you think about your own natal chart, wherever Capricorn is in your chart is a place where you really do have to go internal to yourself and learn your own personal integrity and really bring that in a big way to that area of your life.
Yeah, and other keywords are things like responsibility, accountability. Yeah, I think really just planning, having a plan, understanding the plan, taking time to set the plan is part of Capricorn. So, anything else, or do you want to start comparing?
Let's take a look at the two charts, the two full moons side by side and see what that looks like.
Okay, so you will see here, Capricorn full moon number 1 and Capricorn full moon number 2.
First of all, let me
Um,
say one thing
yeah,
before you say
yeah,
much
do it.
more, Jenny. I just want to let people know, if you don't already know, that when there are red lines, those are the squares and the oppositions, and those are the areas where there's stress.
Mhm.
And the areas, the blue lines between the planets are the flowing opportunities and gifts between the planets. You know, aspects between the planets are like conversations. Okay,
Mm.
so yeah, the red lines are the more difficult conversations, the blue lines are the easier conversations. And in looking at these, that's what you see right away is the difference, isn't it, Jenny?
Yeah, and that's actually why we decided to just show these to you, because really quickly you kind of get an idea of some of the things that are going on here. The other thing I'll add to your, you know, the describing the colored lines is the thicker the line, the more exact the aspect. So when you're, you know, and that kind of, it's just sort of intuitive, right? You see it, you're like, ooh, what's that? You know, so in the first one, we have a big red triangle. And what that is the moon opposing the sun, and Venus and Mercury, which are all together at that point, are close enough. I mean, they're not perfectly together, but pretty close. And that they were all being squared by Neptune. And that was the keynote of our whole conversation, was the type of pressure that a square from Neptune puts on you. It's like walking through a fog. It's just, you know, Neptune is confusing and challenging in a way of like, you don't know where you're going. You don't have the answer. You don't have clarity, and you're just kind of bumbling forwards or stumbling forwards or mumbling. It's all the umbling words. um, and that was kind of what was presented to us at the very beginning of the season. What else do you have to add about the first chart or whatever, Laurie?
Well,
What
I
do you
guess
think?
the only other thing I want to say is that, you know, Neptune, yeah, all that confusion and stuff, but it also can bring in real deception,
Mm,
self-deception or deception from others. Yeah, it's a when I see Neptune, I often just think, you know, things are not as they appear to be.
mm,
And that's always a good line to think of when Neptune is highlighted. The other thing with this chart that is interesting, actually in both these charts, is
mhm,
that Saturn's not aspected at all.
mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah. So what's that a statement about?
Well, it's interesting given that Saturn rules the Capricorn moon. And, you know, Saturn being not aspecting anything, it's like it's not having any conversations with anyone else. It's sort of out on its own somewhere. And so the moon doesn't really, I don't know.
Mm,
I would tend to I would tend to say something like it's not taking responsibility. But I don't know if that's too stark a statement. Maybe one needs to look a little deeper for what the responsibility is. It's interesting because it's in the same sign. Oh, what happened?
No, coming back. There we go.
Huh,
You
interesting.
see it again? Sorry about that.
Yeah. So
Uh-huh.
given that it's in the same sign as Neptune, which is the comparative piece between these two charts, it's rather interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can go either way. It's a funny statement. It's sort of like you said, either it's like, yep, there's no responsibility here. Like Saturn's kind of like, oh, I'm in la la land myself, and I'm
Yeah.
not connected to the rest of this chart because it doesn't have aspects. But at the same time, because it's a solo entity, it's also kind of in a way like a wild card. So it can take away the whole chart. It could go the other way where there's nothing but responsibility of really getting stuck not in a healthy way, like getting stuck in taking full responsibility for too much, or it could be like getting stuck in suffering because Pisces can be suffering. So there's a couple different ways to look at it, but what you do know about it is it's not connected into the rest of the chart. So that does make some kind of statement about it's maybe not getting the full message, or it doesn't know how to give the instructions it normally would like to give as Saturn. Um, it's an interesting conversation. And I don't know, in the first chart too, having Neptune in the mix, it's like Neptune is mystery. It's mysticism. It also can be escapism, like, oh, I really don't want to deal with this thing. I'm out of here. So there's a few different ways with the square. We're just sort of assuming that it's going to play into the more negative aspects of Neptune because it's a square, and a square is a more difficult aspect. So I think more about walking around the fog. Neptune can also be toxins, poisons, things like alcohol, drugs that play into the escapism. Those are all some of those topics.
Yeah,
That's all. Everything comes up to that one.
I'm
Yeah.
glad you brought in the escapism piece because that is so important with Neptune and with that opposition. Yeah, you really want to think about where you're not being clear with yourself, where you may be engaged in escapist behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that's the first one. So the biggest thing that switches here is you go from that Neptune square to Neptune trine and sextile to the moon. So here you can see how Neptune is trining to the sun, but the main focus really is the the sextile to the moon here. So what does that bring in, Laurie?
Well, that just tells us that within this 1 month period between June 21st and July 21st, what it suggests to me is whatever that escapism was or whatever that confusion was has really shifted. Your attention toward it has shifted. You have gone through a process during this month where you now find yourself at this second Capricorn full moon a lot more accepting. Maybe you've come to a point of acceptance or a point where you've really learned compassion in some way around the same particular issue. It'll be around the same issue, but you've learned to take it from a negative to a positive. And the more positive side of Neptune is issues of compassion and acceptance and, really just opening to the intangibility of Neptune, the dream, might be a little lost in a dream, but it's a hell of a lot more pleasant than it was a month ago.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely like a tone of surrender, but also can also represent forgiveness, like maybe something that you found very difficult to forgive early on. You found a way to do it now. Something has shifted, something has changed, a new perspective has come in and has allowed you to do that. The other thing is like Neptune is not only, it's almost exactly the same, it is at the same degree, it's even a couple minutes earlier in the second chart because it's now retrograde. You can see that it's got there's a little pink line there marking the retrograde. on the second chart. So like right here. And so it's in the exact same place. I mean, this just brings a little more of like, there's some kind of internal switch that you've been able to make that now makes this your friend and your helper and your support, and gives you an opportunity instead of being something that before you were kind of railing against. So is there anything else you want to talk about in the comparison, or you want to move to just the chart?
I think we're ready to move on. It is interesting that within that month's time, both Neptune and Saturn have gone retrograde, and that Saturn is still out of contact. It's just interesting to see that.
It is.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
let's move on, and let's open up this, which is the second chart. This is the chart of this particular full moon, July 21st, 6:17 a.m. in Eastern time, and it's at 29 degrees of Capricorn. So there it is, and you can just see how it's laid out here. I don't think we really need to talk any more about it because we already have, haven't we? Or actually, no, there
No,
are
we've
some
missed,
things to
yeah,
talk
a few more things to hit.
yeah, there are a few things here that are really quite interesting. That day, July 21st, is an extremely powerful day. There's some pretty interesting things that come into focus on that day. Let's see, we've got Mercury squaring Uranus, right? What else? I know there's a bunch of stuff here.
Well, Mars trines Pluto, and Pluto's the thing we really need to,
right.
I think, is the other big news here, along with the Neptune sextile.
Yes. Yeah, just a slight detail.
Yeah, it's a little detail. And I believe, and Venus is sextiling Jupiter, which we really like. That's a really nice aspect.
Oh, yes. Whoops.
So yeah, so basically, I think just starting off by saying, okay, we've talked about Neptune being the support system compared to being a stress before, but this chart brings in Pluto. We have talked about Pluto many, many times in the last couple of years because it's in Aquarius now. It's made a big shift, and this full moon is just over the sign line. And they're actually heading towards each other because Pluto's retrograde and the moon's moving in its normal direction. So it's a powerful conjunction between these two, and it's very tight across that sign line. So there's no way that you can get into this Capricorn full moon without recognizing there is some insistence that the way you hold yourself is transformed. There's a change, there's something that you are having to do differently. And especially compared to what went on at the beginning of the month. It wasn't anywhere near Pluto at the beginning of the month. They weren't in a traditional aspect with each other at all. So now you are in this place where it's like, oh, you can't see one without the other.
Yeah, it's really, it's right after this full moon, the moon's going to conjunct that Pluto. The next day, the sun goes into Leo and will almost immediately oppose that Pluto. So yeah, this is very significant placement with Pluto there.
Yeah. Yeah, and Pluto just brings depth. It brings, having to look deeper than you might have ever even thought into the moon material this represents. It really brings in, something coming to light that it was hidden, something you didn't expect, that being tucked deeply away. And it could be something on a collective level that we're all seeing on a collective level that we didn't expect. But it also, depending on your own chart and what's happening in your own chart, it certainly could be something in your own life that comes to light. You got to think about the symbolism of this big, bright full moon you can see in the sky shining into this, the deep, dark reaches of Pluto, which holds so much collective wisdom and understanding, really, that's buried and tucked away. I mean, I don't know. What do you think, Laurie? What do you have for that?
I guess I'm just thinking about, in our personal charts with our personal lives, we all, if you're watching this and are paying attention to your own chart and listening to other astrologers and us, you're probably pretty aware of where Aquarius is in your chart and where that Pluto has relatively recently entered, because that area is really been activated for approximately a year now, but we're really starting to learn what that's about for us on personal level, the incredible transformation of that area of our lives. You know, wherever Pluto moves, its job really is to empower us, but it's going to destroy whatever's in the way of that process, and that can be a pretty painful process for many people. So this full moon is really highlighting that. So
Yeah.
it's really a reminder of where that big change is happening, and this is really illuminating, it really is illuminating the Pluto as well. So
Yeah.
it's reminding us of that process that's already
Yeah.
in motion.
Yeah, and when you add so to that picture, then you add the trine from Mars to the picture, and that really just brings a much more active component to the whole situation. Mars just freshly in Gemini. It's very dynamic to have that in the mix. I mean, Mars always brings more activity to everything it touches. So this suggests some way in which this lands in your life in a clear way, like, oh, like that you're gonna see it. It's gonna land in some manner because of that.
Yeah.
um yeah. uh Thank
Yeah,
goodness Venus
that
is
is
sextile
really
to
interesting,
Jupiter.
that Mars trine Pluto. If
Yeah.
you know your chart and you know where Aquarius is and where Gemini is, look at the those issues as a unit and what it is that's being really activated there. Trines, I think of trines as gifts. That doesn't necessarily, we don't always want the gift that's given. I guess I want to say that. Mars and Pluto's pretty volatile. Whether it's a gift or a struggle, it's going to be volatile.
Hmm. Yeah. And I mean, just to round out the picture of this chart, then you also have the Mercury square Uranus, which is, I mean, that can bring a lot of excitement, but it also can bring stress. It can bring anxiety, and it's between Leo and Taurus there. So just something about, yeah, that's just how I read that. Just like there's some stress. If you feel stressed, and you know that this aspect is happening, it's like it can help you to calm your mind, to know that there's tools to use to kind of calm your mind. Um, and the final thing I think is really nice, which I like at the end, is the sextile between Venus and Jupiter. Really adds in a sweet little spot to this because there's a fair amount of difficulty to this chart. Despite there being a lot of flow, there's also you're going to need to lean into that sextile to Neptune, I think, to support you in this moment of time, in reflecting on everything that's happened in the last month since June 21st of the first full moon.
And the one that we're going to really focus on in the individual impacts is that Neptune, because of the shift from the first Capricorn full moon to the second Capricorn full moon. We really want to focus on that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's clear this drawing up and let's talk about folks who have Aries rising. So if you have Aries rising, the focus here with the first and the second Capricorn full moon of this season, it's really focused in your 10th house. So for those of you with Aries rising, you are really paying attention here to what's happening in your career and how what's happening in your career is being impacted by your home and family. So that's the opposition. There's some sort of stress there, but that's really highlighting and bringing your attention to your career space. Now, with Neptune in a sextile aspect, coming out of the square aspect from the first full moon, you want to think about what was the confusion here at the first full moon in late June 21st, at that first full moon. There was some way in which there was something in the back of your mind, some hidden process in the back of your mind that was leaving you feeling a bit confused, unsettled, that now over the process of this month, you very likely have settled into some sort of acceptance or some understanding, some compassion for yourself, perhaps. So that's what you want to really think about. What is it in your hidden mind, your unconscious thinking, or your spiritual understandings? What is it coming out of that that is now really supporting you in your integrity and understanding of your career? That's the
Mhm.
question I would ask. What do you think, Jenny?
Yeah, I like that. I think you've covered some, good bases there, and it's a good question to leave people with. I'll just add simply the idea that, Neptune has been in your 12th house for a long time. It certainly implies some change in your subconscious or perhaps your spiritual ideas. So that might be something that you're really getting acquainted with. And then the other thing I'll just say is that because this full moon is happening so close to Pluto, that whatever is going on in your 10th house, there's a change happening that is part of this full moon that you're really seeing or witnessing. But that's it. I think you did cover the ground well.
Awesome. Okay, let's go on to folks who have Taurus rising.
Alrighty, so those of you with Taurus rising, this second full moon, just like the first one in Capricorn, is lighting up your house of your wisdom, your worldview, the way you're able to think critically. The ninth house refers to your education and travel experiences as well. So there's something that is, have been asked to seriously contemplate in terms of your worldview for this entire season. And now there may have been some sort of, I don't know, confusion or struggle or suffering that was coming from the way you were relating to your community. And now that you now see how this can be a source of your strength, that this actually is an opportunity, that your community is presenting you with an opportunity to help expand your worldview. There's definitely some kind of learning that has taken place in this time period between the two full moons. So I think that's pretty cool. So the question you really want to ask yourself is, what has changed in your connection to your community in this month's time? What has originally felt, like I said, a struggle or a confusion that now is something that you're actually like, oh, I can draw support from that.
Mm.
So that's the question that you really want to ask yourself in this time.
Mhm.
So what do you have to add, Lori?
Oh, I just am having all kinds of funny ideas about your community invited you to an ayahuasca ceremony and you were really scared and didn't want anything to do with it because you were afraid of it. And now you've decided it's going to spiritually wake you up and illuminate your wisdom. Those are the ideas that I'm having. But aside from that, yeah, it's something coming out of the community that originally at the first moon, like you said, there's some struggle to understand something about your community that now you're seeing as a way to support this growing. The wisdom of integrity comes up there too, with Capricorn there, anyone with Taurus rising, integrity in the worldview, in how they approach education or travel or any of those things that open up the worldview is so important. So that's
Yeah.
what I think now.
Yeah, and I just, that process is supporting you in some big change that's happening between your worldview and whatever's happening in your profession. There's a switch about to be thrown that this brings up, and you're going to need to lean into the support of that, whatever that change is. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So just think about what you've been learning. Saturn's been moving through that 11th house. There's so much in community for you that's really important for you to be taking on at this time. Okay, moving on to folks who have Gemini rising. If you've got Gemini rising, the focus here, just like in the first Capricorn full moon a month ago, the focus is on the 8th house. So the 8th house is the area of your life where you're navigating issues of other people. It's a really deep house. It's a house where we really struggle with what other people bring to us. You know, you can think of that eighth house as other people's values, other people's baggage, other people's money. It can be a difficult house. And with Capricorn there, how you navigate those areas is so important. And again, the word integrity always comes up for me around where Capricorn is. It's so important that you understand your own level of integrity in how you manage other people. Now, with this second full moon, you want to think about what you have learned over this past month since June 21st at the first Capricorn full moon. There was something within the area of your career or your social reputation that felt confusing, unsettled. There was something in there that was not feeling comfortable, something you were struggling with, that now by this second full moon, you realize that you've learned from what you're doing in your career or social reputation. You're really learning how to bring more compassion into the way that you're dealing with other people's stuff. So there's some compassion that has been opened up out of the struggle earlier. So, you know, you want to really lean into that and think about what that is and how to use it at this point. Well, what do you have to say about that, Jenny? I know I came up with a really silly story when we were first talking, but we don't want to we don't want to go down that line.
No. No, I'll just say that something that probably felt stressful and confusing and, not helpful coming from your workplace now is something that you can lean into, that suddenly you can see how it's supportive and actually you know how to use it, and actually it can help you see opportunities and in how you, as you've said, manage other people's stuff that the full moon is showing you. um there's also a big change where you think about Pluto and Aquarius being in this mix too, that the full moon's right next to. And this change is showing you where your integrity around dealing with other people's baggage is starting to transform into a real source of wisdom for you. And so the integrity that you have at this full moon, it is kind of giving you a little like light bulb into a much longer, slower process in your life. So I like that part of it too. It's good. It's like, go ahead and lean into whatever that thing that used to be confusing and annoying. Just now you see it as a tool. So
Yeah.
great.
Yeah,
hmm
that's great. Okay, let's move on to folks who have Cancer rising.
Alrighty, so those of you with Cancer rising, this second Capricorn full moon is still landing in your house of the seventh house, I should say, where you have Capricorn, right? We're still there. The seventh house is all about partnerships. And again, it can be your spouse, but it also is other people that you work with. A business partner could be part of that. So no matter what this is doing, both these full moons are really illuminating your ability to have integrity in those relationships. You are likely somebody who is very serious about your one-on-one relationships, and they are important, and it's extra important that you have a lot of integrity in those relationships. In the meantime, with the Neptune piece that we've been talking about, back at the first full moon, right at the beginning of Cancer season, there was some pressure or stress coming from the ninth house. Ninth house can be travel, it can be higher education, and it can also simply be your worldview. And maybe there's some way that you just could not get your head around what your worldview needed to be. And now with the Neptune sextiling the moon, now you can sort of see the opportunity of your worldview, your ability to have compassion, your ability to perhaps be forgiving to somebody that previously was you were not able to be forgiving towards, or just surrendering to a process. If you're traveling somewhere, there's a process that might be involved that you've been involved in, and there is a lot of surrender with traveling. You get on that airplane, like you are surrendering. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it. Think about in your own life, what is the difference between how you were feeling June 21st when there was confusion and pressure and stress, and to now where you see the opportunity being presented to you in terms of compassion and surrender and forgiveness and so on.
Yeah, I like how you talk about the surrender for travel. And with Pisces in that ninth house, anyone with Cancer rising, yeah, travel has to hold that component of surrender, as does education or, all of those things. And there is an element here between June 21st and July 21st where the process of surrendering your own worldview in whatever way that is for you is allowing you at this second full moon to go from that confusion to compassion for your partner. I feel like it's you might be like starting out the process at the first full moon with confusion and even blame. There's something that the partner could do it different to help you feel better. And now there's a surrender to the process and what you've learned as this month has gone by. I think
Nice.
that's really lovely. Really using that Neptune now as a tool of compassion.
Nice.
And that, compassion in the realm of relationship is certainly part of a person with Cancer rising's integrity in relationship. You can't, if you've got Cancer rising, you're so serious around relationship, and yet compassion has to be a part of it. And this is really opening up this process through this month where you're really deepening your understanding of how to bring that compassion to relationship.
Nice.
I like that. Okay, so let's move on to folks who have Leo rising. If you've got Leo rising, this full moon, again, for the second time, we have the full moon landing in your sixth house. And the sixth house that's your day-to-day routines. It's how you go about your business. It's how you take care of yourself. It's how you take care of your life. If you, it's health, and it's also just job, day-to-day stuff, how you go about your business. So this is what's really being highlighted early in the first full moon on June 21st. There was some way in which your integrity in your day-to-day process of living was somehow being questioned by some confusion of how you were navigating other people's stuff. Maybe you just didn't feel right about some way that you were navigating other people's deep issues, and it was bringing in a question of your own integrity of how you cared for yourself. Now at this second full moon, you've gone through this process. You've learned how to accept where you're at in this navigation of other people's boundaries, other people's stuff with your own boundaries. And you now are able to see how that confusion or that challenging discomfort now is a source of support. There's some way in which you have been able to maybe release particular expectations of how you're navigating those processes that's allowing you to be more compassionate toward yourself and toward how you live your day-to-day life. I don't know. What do you have to add there?
Well, it's funny. I was thinking with the Leo rising one, it's interesting how we're talking about the sixth and the eighth house. And the reason I'm saying that is because you're crossing the line between the lower part of the chart and the upper part of the chart. So there really is an implication of feeling some kind of pressure, stress, etc. The things you've been mentioning, the confusion coming from outside of you, from somebody who's frustrating you or whatever, and impacting your ability to, maybe it's kind of like somebody stressing you out and you're trying to work out and you're stressed out about this person's issue. And now at the second full moon, you're starting to say, wait a minute, I have more understanding of this person. I have developed more compassion through this person's problem. I mean, this is just an example. But it is interesting to me that really bridges that gap between an internal thing, which is the sixth house of you being serious about your routines and your health, and then the external, somebody else kind of coming towards you with their stuff that is but it really, the whole thing is just you're getting educated about the depth of compassion that you're capable of. As a Leo rising person, your hidden secret is that you have a ton of compassion hidden away. It's just, there's always the ego question with a Leo rising chart. If you have to get past the ego stuff in order to get into that compassion, but my goodness, you've got a huge well of it. So this is really a nice opportunity to, you're in the process of becoming a new person in the way you handle all your partnerships with this one. So
That's
that's
nice.
good. Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to folks with Virgo rising.
So those of you with Virgo rising, this second Capricorn full moon, just like the first one, is lighting up your house of creativity. It's lighting up the fifth house, which really at its core is referring to how you give of yourself, how you pour your love into someone, the type of love you might have for a child, or a process where you just completely lose yourself in it because you just love doing it. So there's something that has opened up, inside of you during this month-long process of getting really serious about whatever your creative pursuits are. It's like getting serious about fun is always the way I end up thinking about this one. But at any rate, like early on in this month, around, June 21st, with the first full moon, there was a lot of pressure coming from your partnerships that maybe was kind of like, making you want to run away into your creative process, or make you want to I don't know, just be confused about what the hell that person wants. And you're just like, I don't care. I'm going to go have fun. That might have been how the first one, there's some ideas about how the first one may have presented. And now you're sort of saying, wait a minute, my partner's actually really fun. I can incorporate them into my creative process, or they're really supporting me in this process, or the way I do partnerships is actually coming into support of my ability to completely give of myself and my love unconditionally. I mean, it really is changing something that previously seemed to be a stress to now something that has some lovely flow to it. I mean, marrying together the place of where you give love and the place of your partnership, I mean, that is a really wonderful thing to bring together when you really look at it that way. So ask yourself what that is. What were the ways that your various partners in life are stressing you out? And now at this point in time, how are they actually supporting you? And how are you actually able to surrender to that?
Yeah, I think that's really good. Because it's Pisces and Neptune in that seventh house, it may not really have much at all to do with the actual partner. It might be very clear to you what it
Yeah.
is that is related to the partner, but it could also just be your own understanding of what partnership means to you. You may have at the first Capricorn full moon, there may have just been some ways in which you're thinking, oh, I think I just need to be single because there's something in this partnership that I'm attempting to make work isn't working, or something along those lines, that at this, just like you said, Jenny, at this second Capricorn full moon, you see the benefit of it, and you're able to really bring that compassion into your process of creativity, that compassion, that softness, that Neptunian dreaminess. You can bring that in to assist you in the integrity that needs to be developed in your own creativity. Because, if you've got Virgo rising, you need to remember that your creativity is a serious process to you. It's not frivolous, and it's not yeah, it's not a frivolous thing, and you have to have integrity there.
Yeah, I really like how this just keeps making me think of just the artistic flow. Like how nice to have a flow, to introduce more flow, especially with an earth sign in your creative place, to introduce more flow into that. That's really great.
Yeah, so go paint a picture if you've got Virgo rising. of cats.
Mhm. Yes.
Okay, so let's move on to folks who have Libra rising. Oh, is
Mhm.
this one mine I'm supposed to start?
Yes.
I totally spaced. Okay, so if you have Libra rising, this full moon, as the last full moon, is falling in your fourth house. So there's some way, first of all, if you've got Libra rising, your home and family, that fourth house arena, is a place of a lot of seriousness, a lot of, it's a place where you want things to be a certain way. You want to make things be a certain practical way. You have a lot of practicality there. You need a lot of integrity in that area of your life. Now, the difference between the full moon on June 21st and the second one is all in the relationship to Neptune. So what happened is on June 21st, the first Capricorn full moon, you were really struggling with some way in which the day-to-day routines of how you manage and handle and take care of your day-to-day life. There was some confusion there, possibly some issue around health. But there's some issue there in your day-to-day life that was really making things confusing. The illumination of the full moon in the fourth house was not clear because of this difficulty, this lack of clarity around how you're managing your health. Whatever that was between that full moon and this full moon, there has been a process whereby now you're seeing that confusion, the gift of that. So it's not confusion anymore. It kind of develops into possibly a compassion for how you're managing your day-to-day routines, perhaps enabling you to bring compassion into your home and family arena. So you really want to ask how those two are linked together, how your home and family links up with your day-to-day routines, and where there's a process by which you really have the opportunity to bring more softness, more compassion between
Mm,
those areas.
nice. Yeah, I like to think of the switch in how you're dealing with the Neptune, from the more stressful to the softer aspect. It's like before it was confusing and you just didn't really know what decision to make, especially with a Libra rising chart. You're kind of like, I don't know. And then you've managed to turn that into like a source of magic, like something
I like
exciting, and brings a little drop of magic into your routines, which, like, who couldn't use some little magic in their routine life? So I always think about this as, I like to do a lot of outdoor recreation. It's like going paddleboarding and like being on the water and floating, and in the wintertime it's floating on powder if you're a skier, bringing that magic in. So I'm just bringing it up to invite you to kind of contemplate how can you turn something that is, confusing or hard to get at into a little piece of magic at the second full moon. So yeah, and fold that into the core of your personality, which is also what the fourth house can represent, the foundation of your personality, and carry that with you. So,
I like that. That's great. Okay, let's move to folks with Scorpio rising.
okay, so those of you with Scorpio rising, what the second full moon likely is bringing up for you, once again, just like the first full moon, is something about your communication. Um, this implies that you are very serious about the way that you use your voice. It suggests that you are somebody who thinks deeply and contemplates deeply before you're willing to speak, because you know that your words carry a great deal of weight. And both these full moons are really letting you see that in a certain way, like see the weight that your words carry. The difference between the two is that at the first full moon, there was some real struggle around not being sure how to give of yourself, not being sure how to give love, or not being sure how to, access your playfulness, and things maybe feeling a bit heavy, and maybe there's some drudgery feelings involved, or there was some confusion about, I don't really know what I want to say. And knowing how important your words are, that can kind of stop you in your tracks if you feel confused about that. Now at this second full moon, whatever that thing was, it now is something that can support you, something that can help you. So maybe you've really tapped into a well of compassion, that you now know you can articulate through your voice, or perhaps you've surrendered to some kind of creative process, that is coming through in the way that you speak.
Mm.
So the idea here is, asking yourself, what is the difference between something that before on June 21st was causing you stress and challenge and confusion and a lot of uncertainty. And now it's something that you can surrender to or lean into or accept, or develop more compassion around. That's the main question we're really focusing in on here. So that's that. But do remember, your voice carries a hell of a lot of weight. So
Yeah, people with Scorpio rising, definitely with Capricorn there in the third house. I guess the only thing I really want to add to what you've said, Jenny, is the fact that that third house, yeah, ultimately it's your voice. But it can also quite often show up in relationships with siblings, with neighbors, with situations within your actual neighborhood.
mhm.
It's with our siblings and neighbors that we learn to speak. So that's, that third house also brings in those ideas. So yeah, what is it that you're surrendering to in your creativity that's allowing you to bring compassion to those people, to the neighborhood you live in, however that's playing out for you. So
Hmm.
that's really lovely. I like
That's
that.
great. Yeah. Yeah. It's good to think about those relationships because, yeah, that might be where you need to apply it, right?
Yeah, and one of the things that this one makes me think of is poetry and music. Because, if you think about the creativity, Neptune in the fifth house, this mystical kind of dreamy creativity, bringing that into your voice, then,
Mm.
thinking about that just brings to mind poetry or music.
Yeah. Singing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sing. If you have Scorpio rising, take this opportunity, take this full moon and write a poem or sing a song. Okay. Moving right along to folks who have Sagittarius rising, this brings the focus of this second Capricorn full moon, just like the first one on June 21st. This second one is also highlighting your second house. Folks with Sagittarius rising, it's so interesting how these things work out. It's like people with
Yeah.
Sagittarius rising show up in the world kind of, pretty playful and loose and ready to drop anything at a moment's notice and go travel the world. There's this freedom that you think of with Sagittarius rising, but those are the folks who have Capricorn in that second house. So when it comes to money, resources, and their own self-worth, there's such a seriousness there.
Mm.
And that's what's really being highlighted here for you with Sagittarius rising is your, your integrity around money, resources, and your own self-worth. So
Mm.
that's what's being highlighted. Now, the difference and the thing that we've decided to focus on with this video is the difference between the first Capricorn full moon and this Capricorn full moon in how it relates to Neptune in the chart. A month ago, on June 21st, at that first full moon, that first Capricorn full moon, there was some struggle that involved your home or family. There was some way in which there was something going on in your home or family that was leaving you confused, maybe second guessing your own self-worth or second guessing how you're making or spending money or your resources. There was something coming from family that was difficult to understand.
Mm.
Now, at this second full moon, you've been through the process of this month. And now, whatever that was, whatever that challenge at home was, is now really allowing you're really seeing how that difficulty and that challenge has shifted and turned into a growth opportunity. there's some way in which you're able to bring more compassion to yourself, and how,
Mm.
you know, I'm thinking of somebody particular with this, that, I can really see how this could play out as, really understanding that your self-worth and your ability to make a paycheck come together, and you have to bring in the compassion from the family. I didn't quite say that the way I wanted to, but I
Oh,
think
it's
you
good.
understand there. That's where the connection is, and that's where there was a challenge, but now you're seeing the gift.
Mm.
Something that you've surrendered to, a process within your home that is allowing you to keep going to that job and making that money, and allowing your own self-worth to be supported by it.
Yeah, the other thing this one really brings in for me too is thinking about the fourth house's ancestry and lineage. It's almost like you may have discovered something about your ancestry that you really weren't too happy about. This could be something, or there might be an issue with one of your family members too, but in any case, it's like that idea of like, oh, finding out a secret, you've been deceived, and feeling a lot of frustration at the beginning of this month, June 21st, and then now you're making peace with it, and you're like, oh, and you're actually having a whole new understanding. And because, whenever you find out something that you'd previously believed otherwise, or you were deceived or whatever, you always have this kind of process of like things falling into place, where finally these mysteries that you didn't get start falling into place. So I'm not saying that's what's happening in your life, but just that idea of like having some around whatever your lineage is, and how it feeds into your self-worth, or money, for sure, and then just making peace of that, and sort of being able to accept it and saying, okay, this is what's happening. And then letting that really be a source of strength, a source of self-understanding.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Huh. Yeah, my mind's going on a whole nother story, but we don't want to take
I
10
know there's a
hours.
lot, and everybody has to think about for themselves,
Right.
what is
Yeah,
this
what
like? What are
is it?
those stories a metaphor for in your own life?
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so let's move on to folks who have Capricorn rising.
okay, so those of you with Capricorn rising, this Capricorn full moon is, guess what, falling in your first house, just like the first Capricorn full moon, exactly 1 month before this, on June 21st. So no matter what, both these full moons, kind of bookending Cancer season, are really revealing something very personal about you. They're shining a light on your ability to, let's say, be the authority in the room. When you walk into the room, like, you turn heads, you hold authority in the room in a way that maybe you don't always understand. That it's but it happens.
Mhm.
So that's what both full moons are really illuminating, is this first house, who you are as a Capricorn rising person, which really implies somebody who walks around the world with an air of seriousness. And it also suggests that integrity is going to be very important to a Capricorn rising person, like really understanding, doing the internal hermit work we talked about in the beginning of this video, of understanding who you are and how you impact the world. So those are just some light little topics that are coming up during this full moon. Now, the first full moon on June 24th, we talked a lot about some kind of confusion coming from a sibling or a neighbor, or the way that you speak, like some confusion you have about how to use your voice, perhaps. And coming in and sort of pressurizing you, and making you question like who you are as an authority, like, who am I? And now at this point, at this full moon, you're really having an opportunity to see that as a source of strength, to see the opportunity that's available from your ability to speak with compassion, to speak in a manner that lets people understand that you get what's going on with their suffering, that you see their suffering, a way in which you're able to be compassionate, forgiving, understanding, and really understand the intangible coming through your voice. So at this point, you're really getting to see what a great source of strength that is, like how that really enables you to not only be a person with authority, but a person who knows how to be kind and
Mhm.
forgiving and understanding when it comes to your struggles, especially if that struggle is coming from a sibling or a neighbor or sort of casual contacts. So that's kind of a little picture, what to think about when you come into the second full moon.
Yeah. I like that. I was thinking, as you were talking about it, just how at the first full moon, the confusion around how you're using your voice. How can I be an authority, but my conversations are weak, or I'm not clear in what I say. So there's that struggle. How can I be an authority with this piece? And now you've learned you can do that by surrendering to the compassion in your voice. I really like that. That's really lovely.
Yeah. And how we need leaders who are compassionate, and that's kind of what this chart is a statement of. So, yeah,
That's
nice.
lovely. Okay, let's move on to folks who have Aquarius rising. If you have Aquarius rising, this Capricorn full moon on July 21st, just like the first Capricorn full moon on June 21st, is falling in your 12th house. Now, folks with Aquarius rising kind of show up in the world. They're very innovative, intellectual. Their personality comes across that way. And yet, behind the scenes in that 12th house, which is really our unconscious nature, our unconscious psychological patterns, our spiritual understandings, there is a real seriousness in that area. And that's where the focus is. So there's a lot of focus right here for you to work on, understand, and develop this serious internal place. Now, what we've decided to focus on in this particular video is how Neptune, at the first of these two full moons, there was a real confusion in as we were trying to focus and see and understand these internal processes. Our own self-worth, our own understanding of our self-worth was causing us some difficulty. We were confused. We couldn't quite get into the deep understanding that we were struggling for because of this confusion or feeling that we were somehow deluding ourselves with our own understanding of self-worth. Well, through this process of this past month, between the two full moons, that has shifted, and you have been able to release this high expectation in some way, or you've been able to surrender to understanding your self-worth on a more mystical plane, on a more, you've developed a lot of self-compassion. I think a lot of it is developing the self-compassion and seeing yourself from a different, softer perspective. And that enables you to use this gift of self-compassion.
Nice. Yeah, everything you said is great, and I mean, just thinking about how your compassion, your ability to be forgiving, accepting, kind, compassionate, it's a resource. It's a huge resource. I mean, I would almost argue it's like the best resource you could have, to navigate this world, to be able to hold yourself in that way. Because when you do that, by extension, you're going to just be able to hold that space for other people, especially this full moon bringing in, it's in the 12th house of your subconscious. So it's really like laying down this, understanding that of how much compassion is a resource for you as part of your subconscious makeup. So we need more like you. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. Okay, let's move on to folks who have Pisces rising.
Okay. So those of you with Pisces rising, this second Capricorn full moon is just like the first one. It's lighting up the area of your life that has to do with how you receive love, how you manage groups, and just kind of your community, the community that supports whatever you're working on. Just quick reminder, community can be any sort of group. It can be a work group. It can be a big group of friends. It can be a workout class you show up to that you see kind of on the regularly. Those are all going to be examples of community. And so both of these full moons are really highlighting that fact, are both highlighting the importance of community for you. And as a Pisces rising person, it really suggests that community is very important. It is a place where you are very serious and that you can really demonstrate a lot of devotion in that community, possibly. So there's something about that that is showing up at both these full moons. The difference between the two, however, is that at the first full moon, there was some kind of perhaps self-confusion, a lack of understanding about who you are when you show up in that community, or something that you just felt uncertain about, or maybe something you felt you couldn't forgive yourself for, that you wanted to show up one way and you weren't showing up the way you wanted in your community, or whatever it is. Something that didn't feel very good, that felt like a fog or a place of suffering almost. And now at this second full moon, you really get the opportunity to completely reframe that and see whatever that confusion was as actually a source of strength. And as a Pisces rising person, you walk around the world with this ability to be sensitive and empathetic, and kind and understanding. It doesn't mean you automatically do it, but you sure as heck have the ability to do it. So this full moon is really allowing you to see the source of your strength as your compassion, as your kindness, and that you do show up in your community with this, and you now see how well those work together, and you can kind of almost exhale and relax into that community and let it hold you a little more once you really surrender to this whole process.
I
Yeah.
really like how you talked about that. Thinking about community, that 11th house with Capricorn on that line. Yeah,
Mhm.
how serious that this area is for people with Pisces rising, and really understanding that that community, the 11th house community, is the community that supports you.
Mm.
There's an element here where I think on the first full moon with the Neptune in a square aspect, you may have really been struggling to allow yourself to be supported, because you
Mm.
weren't able to see that Neptune as a gift like you can now. That, there's such a seriousness with how you take community that Neptune felt like it wasn't serious enough.
Mm.
Like I'm too Piscean for this serious community, but now you really are able to embrace your own sensitivity and your own compassion and allow yourself to be supported by that larger community.
Nice.
Yeah.
All
Lovely.
right.
I think we have done what we set out to do here today, Jenny.
I know. I think we have. We've hopefully given you all a comparison between these two full moons and think about the space in between.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Jenny, and we'll be seeing each other soon.
And thanks, Lori. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.